Good afternoon, members of the media, both online and, of course, those with us at the Center for Change, the office of the Alliance for Change. Thank you for joining us this afternoon at our weekly press conference. I'm happy to say today we have presentations from Dr. Vince Adams, who is joining us virtually, and we have here at the Center for Change David Patterson, Member of Parliament and Executive Member, Chairman of the Alliance for Change, and of course, Nigel Hughes, Leader of the Alliance for Change. So without any further delays, I'd love to send us straight over to Dr. Vince Adams for his presentation.
Thanks, Kathy, and welcome to our goodly members of the media. There were several pronouncements that came out of the oil and gas conference and the VP and the Vice President's conference yesterday that we will be addressing in the coming days and weeks as we gather more information. But for want of time, we'll only address a few here today unless they come up in questions. First, the announcement of the new pipeline. Folks, we have yet not even learned how to handle the first one of its kind, and we seem to be irresponsibly jumping into another disaster. As a matter of fact, we can't even execute the most simplistic task of putting down lantern posts around Georgetown, having them falling all over the place, left, right, and center, and not to mention bringing in not one, but two power ships. But blackouts get worse by the day. May we remind you of the promise that was made by the Vice President and President since in 2023, as I recall, that blackouts will be over for Christmas in 2023. But going back to this new proposed pipeline gas to shore project, as you recall, the first one started at less than $1 billion and now ballooned up to close to $2.5 billion and counting. There was no feasibility study done as required by the PSA. And when confronted, the Vice President, despite preaching sanctity of contract, said it's a no-brainer. Then a rigmarole that the XM Bank had done a feasibility study. And then XM Bank declared and said it didn't. Now there is a claim of a $50 million, I think. There was a claim by a contractor because of soil conditions in the construction of the plant. And Mr. Bassington has declared that there will be a delay. And when asked about the impact of this delay yesterday, the Vice President, after a whole lot of song and dance, admits that he didn't know what the impact is. Well, anyone could have concluded that from the inception, since there was no planning to start with. The VP himself has habitually berated and mocked the opposition for always talking about and wanting and requesting that planning be done. A planning would have immediately known the quantitative impacts on cost and schedule on this project because of this delay. Well, Mr. Vice President, please learn the very first lesson in project management is that the success or failure of any project is 100% dependent upon the quality of planning of that project. The bottom line is that it is crystal clear to all that there was no planning whatsoever for this, our biggest infrastructure project ever, except for shouting and empty rhetoric that it is a no-brainer. Therefore, the million-dollar question to the Vice President is, has he learned his lessons and now matured and responsibly enough to accept his mistake of not following his own words of sanctity and contract and so do feasibility study for this new project before blindly jumping in with both feet? As for the second matter, as I said, a lot was reported at the conference, but even more stunning was what was not reported, which is the non-invite of any member of the opposition, including leaders, Mr. Norton, Mr. Hughes, and Dr. Hines. In other words, the total exclusion of the opposition from an international conference showcasing to the world not only our oil and gas opportunities, but our values as a nation. The vice president bragged that there were 60 countries in attendance, which is spectacular indeed, and will no doubt fortunately increase with time. But unfortunately, what those 60 countries, the 1,600 attendees, according to the vice president, and our citizens saw for themselves is that there is no one Guyana as propagandized by this administration when not a single member of the opposition was invited to an international conference of the highest order and consequence for the nation. At least they could have faked the optics of their one Guyana thing for a few days, but their arrogance continues to lead them to believe that people will not believe whatever they say, but people would believe whatever they say and not what they do and what we see. Most notably, this very same exclusion of the opposition became a public issue just a few conferences ago, and their pretext was the opposition doesn't have anyone qualified to be invited. We will leave it to the people to judge the foolishness of that type of rhetoric, but we still indulge and ask one, what are the qualifications to be invited to the conference besides being the opposition leaders and policy decision makers as members of parliament of the most consequential sector of the country's economy? And two, what qualifications do the government officials, President Ali, Vice President Jagdeo, and other government officials have that the opposition leaders and MP don't? And lastly, the earth-shattering revelations happened yesterday when the vice president claimed that they have published all of the field development plans on their website since they came into office. That is an absolute falsity. Recall that we have on this very same platform been calling for the release of these field development plans and the monthly reports, which should be a status report on these FDP activities. The vice president forced, as many may recall, the vice president in his press conference forced to excuse that the FDPs contain proprietary information, which is absolute nonsense, as the reason why he cannot release them. Does the vice president really believe, to begin with, does the vice president really believe that Exxon would trust him with their secrets? Then he changed his tune to say that it's too complicated and the public wouldn't understand it, which is more nonsense, for the vice president should not be judging other people's intelligence by his standard. So no, maybe forgetting what he said before, or just believing people are not listening, or just plain stupid, he switched up to saying that they all have been posted on the website. But the danger of telling lies is that you have to remember your first set of lies. Nevertheless, the good news is that since the VP now appears to have no problem with these FDPs being on the website, since he thinks that they are there already, we request that he ensures that they be posted immediately. These, not only the FDPs, but also the quarterly reports that are supposed to be reporting on the FDPs. Thank you, Kathy.
Adams, and we will go now to Mr. David Patterson, Member of Parliament.
Thank you, Cathy, and good afternoon, members of the media. Just a short statement on the oil and gas conference. I echo the statements made by Vince Adams about not a single member of the opposition being invited. I want to remind the public that the difference between the PPP, their one-seat majority, is only 6,304 votes. That is the difference that they in office between their seats and the combined opposition. We are, of course, going to an election this year, and obviously we will for sure erase that deficit. I also want to remind folks that when during the tenure of the previous administration, we made it our responsibility for every issue on oil and gas that the opposition, the then opposition, be included. Unfortunately, I do think that the organizers have been bullied. We don't want to blame the organizers, but we do think that the organizers have been bullied into ensuring not even the leader of the opposition, the leader of the Alliance for Change, or Parliament, or the parliamentary opposition be officially invited and accorded status in this conference. We also note with some amount of trepidation that the government has announced that the gas to shore project will now be delayed until the second quarter of 2026. The second quarter of 2026. It's something that there would be no surprise to anyone in the country. However, what is surprising, less than 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Finance as well as the Prime Minister reassured the Parliament of Guyana during the budget debates that the gas to shore project would be completed this year, operational this year, and on its eventual operation, that the country would be enjoying a cheaper rate of electricity. It goes to show the regards that the PPP has for the country, that if in the budget speech to the nation for 2025 that they could mislead the entire country. However, when there is a conference with delegates from overseas, they will now admit that that the project is woefully behind. At a cost which is yet to be determined. We know already, and we have seen already, the 28 days will be up very shortly, but it is almost common knowledge that they have lost the claim, the first of the claims made by the contractor, hence the admission of the cost to be determined, hence the admission that the project is delayed until 2026. This shows poor management, and we have no doubt, and we've been saying on this program, this exact same program, and I've been saying in Parliament, that not only will the gas ashore project not be completed this year, similarly the new Demerara Harbour Bridge will not be completed this year. Whatever excuses they would like to make, it points directly to the PPP's management. And there are some issues that they have not addressed. Exxon has completed the pipeline, according to public records. Will Exxon from 2025, having completed the pipeline, will they be start recouping money for 2026 for a pipeline that is filled with nitrogen and is not serving any purpose? No statement was made on this, and I do think that the people and the citizens of Guyana has to know this, because obviously that money will come from our cost recovery. We also note that there was an announcement of that a deal or a MOU, an agreement was signed with a firm for storage of fuel in Guyana. While we will welcome any initiative that would give us cheaper fuel in the country, we are a bit wary on how this process evolved. There's no prior announcement, there's no public tender, there are no details whatsoever on this deal. And we call on the government to publicly state what is exactly has been agreed with this company, how is it going to work? Is the company going to be given a share of our lifts? What is the agreement? Because obviously, if the company is going to be given a share of lifts, we would assume it would be at market value. So we are demanding that we get some additional information on this. process. We will shortly be making a full assessment of all the arrangements and deals that the government announced, unbeknown to the rest of the country during the ongoing oil and gas press conference. We will do that most likely at our press conference next week. A fuller examination, including as best as we can ascertain the costs for these deals, and obviously the transparency in several of these agreements. Thank you.
Thank you, Member of Parliament David Patterson. And now we will go to Leader of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Nigel Hughes.
Good afternoon, members of the press. On Monday last, there was a very, very disturbing incident that took place on the Guyana-Venezuela border, in which 6 members of our armed forces were injured, some more seriously than others. We would have expected that by now the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Foreign Relations would have been convened to brief at least our members of Parliament on the incident, the circumstances surrounding the incident, so that all of us Guyanese can be on board, particularly our parliamentary representatives, in relation to what happened there. There is also a ministerial task force on the border. We would have thought, again, that that task force would have been briefed on what had happened at the border, and that all parliamentary parties would have been brought up to date with what appeared to be a threat to our sovereignty, even though it is disguised as a singular incident. These are matters of grave national importance on which there is no difference between the political parties, both in and out of Parliament, in terms of the protection of our sovereignty. And so we are calling today for the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Foreign Relations to be immediately convened, as well as the Ministerial Task Force on the border. Again, as national parliamentary parties, we thought that the Army ought to have briefed by now, it's 4 days, all the parliamentary parties and perhaps non-parliamentary parties on the developments that took place on Monday the 17th. We are completely unaware of that, and at a minimum, the Leader of the Opposition should have been notified as an important stakeholder in regard to this. Additionally, there are several border communities which are now quite exposed to the actions of the criminal element along the Guyana-Venezuela border. We have not heard of what measures are likely to be taken or have already been taken to protect those vulnerable communities. As you know, most of those communities have probably a single police station with 1 police officer who is perhaps a civilian, and quite a few of those communities do not have even a police station. Given the fact that the reports suggest that 1, possibly 2 members of the criminal gang have been killed, there is likely to be some sort of retaliatory action, and we want to ensure that all Guyanese civilians, particularly those living in border communities, are protected, and that we have afforded them the best possible protection. The second item I want to speak about is we want to applaud the fact that citizen Dr. Terence Campbell has actually commenced proceedings against the Attorney General and the Minister within the Office of the President with the responsibility for finance in relation to the operations of the National Resource Fund and the investments that were made there, as well as the depletion of the fund, and of course accounting for how those funds have been managed. We applaud this effort, and we would like to encourage other citizens to invite the decisions of the court in relation to matters which affect all of us, particularly in the area of oil and gas. We would like, as a third item, to remind all citizens that we are yet to receive the results of the census, and we repeat our oft-repeated demand that that be done as a matter of the highest priority. The final point we want to address is there was a press interview conducted by Travis Chase with a former employee of Western Logistics who made a very startling allegation in relation to Minister Indar. And in that interview, he said that he had been directly paid by Minister Indar while he was working for a company that has been associated with the minister. That gentleman has since produced to us his bank statements, 3 bank statements, and I have them here. Bank statements for the months of April 2023, October 2023, and January 2024. These are his bank statements, in which, and we've highlighted them for those members of the press who are interested, in which Minister Deodat Indar has directly paid him his monthly salary while working as a minister. In that interview, again by Mr. David, he specifically referred to virtual hands-on management by the minister in the operations of the company, in which he said he observed on multiple occasions. In the light of the rules for ministerial responsibility, and in the light of our obligations to make sure that there is no conflict, we would invite the minister to explain why he would be paying the monthly salary of an employee of a private company with which he's associated. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nigel Hughes. And now I'd like to open the floor to discussion, to the media. We are willing to answer your questions. Please go through the usual official protocols of identifying yourself and also the organization that you represent. And I'm going to ask our technical operator to tell me who's actually raised their hands. Please use the raise hand function. And Andrew, do we have any questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Kimberly Giddings from AFC News. With the deadline fast approaching for the life support agreement, Okay, good afternoon. Kimberly Giddings from NCN News. With the deadline fast approaching for the life support agreement signed with the APNU, could you say whether talks have advanced to what level? Do you anticipate any suitable outcome for your party?
Thank you.
David.
With your leave, I would address that. I do thank NCN and the country for checking on the health and the status of the Alliance for Change. As you said, it's an ongoing process. Should there be anything to update, I will update you personally, but it is an ongoing process, and I'll leave it at that.
Go right ahead.
And should the opposition leader Aubrey Norton maintain that he has to be the presidential candidate if the APNU and AFC joins forces to contest this year's election, is the AFC willing to accept that condition?
Well, thank you very much for the second question, and my answer remains the same. This is an ongoing process, and if anything is to update, you will be the, well, everyone, my party will be the first, and you will be the second to be updated.
Thank you very much, Mr. David Patterson. And do we have any other questions, Andrew?
No, I think that on it. Oh, live wire. Javi.
Okay, can I go to Tammy, and then after that we will go to Livewire. Tammy, please identify yourself. And
Good afternoon, everyone. Tommy Garnett from the Garden Times. My question is pertaining to the issue that was raised about the energy conference and the claim that no opposition member was invited, and there were questions about.
Well, there was a response last year or the year before, I believe, towards this same issue. And you guys are maintaining that the opposition is not being invited due to influence from the government. But however, the government has always maintained that they have no stake in the energy conference, and even the energy conference, the principals of the energy conference have noted that that there's no government stake in the conference, and it's all privately funded and privately run. Given that the energy conference has firmly established that all decisions made are with them, why does the opposition continue this narrative that the energy conference is purposely not inviting the opposition for political reasons? And has your party
Well, I
reached
have
out
been
to the energy
reliably
conference?
informed and personally informed that the government has said forget what you're saying, that they will not be participating if any of the opposition is invited. That's a statement. Obviously, the person that spoke to us was off the record, but I maintain my position that is the government's. May not be. They may not say that publicly. Obviously, they don't want to say that publicly. But myself and Vince knows that several of the persons who have attended, and I'll say this on the record, several persons who are in attendance to the conference reached out to us, well, to me in particular, for private meetings, and they were surprised because they actually anticipated to meet us, have a sidebar during the conference, and they were surprised that that we were not there. So I maintain my position, and that's it. Vince would probably know, but we have taken the opportunity, obviously, for the betterment of the oil and gas sector in the country. I have taken the position. I've met with several of them, and I do think I have a meeting this evening as well with several of the investors. So we know what we know.
Let me add here. But even
Thank you.
does anyone really do believe that the government does not have any influence on who attends these conferences? I mean, are we for real in putting up a defense that the government has no influence on who attends this conference? And by the way, it was, I think, it might have been two conferences ago. A gentleman by the name of Mr. Graham, and I'm not sure who he works for, whether it's the government or not, but he came out and made a public statement that the opposition did not have anybody qualified to be in that conference. Here you've got we are putting ourselves before the entire world. We now become big players. The vice president bragged we had 60 countries. Isn't this an opportunity to showcase this whole rhetoric about one Guyana more than any place else, where the entire world is looking at us? And you want to tell me that the government will not use its influence to make sure, at least to show that there, even if it's just for optics, to show that there is one Guyana, to at least invite the opposition? I refuse to believe that besides the information that David talked about, and which I am privy to, so it doesn't wash.
Up on that, because this is a serious matter, and persons are investing or intend to invest or consider investing millions of US dollars. And they're obviously very excited about Guyana being a new frontier. No serious investor puts his money and gets based on one side of the equation. Irrespective of what the PPP may want to say and the government may want to say, there's an election coming on this year. And persons and serious investors would like to know what is our, meaning the other 50% of the country, position on certain important matters. Because, as you know, Exxon, when they do an application, it's 4 or 5 years before the project is actually actualized. So hiding and pretending, serious investors want to know exactly what it is, what the level of risk is, political risk, how does the opposition, how does the rest of the country feel about certain issues, about their involvement, and if we have any opinion on what they're going to do. So hiding behind statements like that, that they have no involvement, it doesn't work well in any business environment. Any country you go to, they meet both the government and the opposition, because there's a lot of money involved in these projects, and they have to go and report to their boards or whoever it is, their finances, that here is the wholesome picture of what's going on.
Thank you, David Patterson. And I think we have questions from Livewire. Please identify yourself and go ahead.
Good afternoon to the panel. Cordell Jones from Livewire News. My question is for Mr. Hughes. I have two questions. Mr. Hughes, you were just speaking in relation to a matter surrounding Minister Indar. Do you see any similarities with accusations of conflict of interest that was made against a former APNU AFC minister? I think it was a former minister of telecommunications. Several allegations of conflict of interest was made as it relates to that minister and a company which she would have operated. Could you speak to that? And my second question is to Mr. Patterson. You spoke of a source just now. Is this a similar source as the one that gave you the information in relation to the non-approval of the loan, which was approved?
And
I'm not hearing you, sir. You're muted.
Mr. Livewire, the source that I quoted for the Exxon, the Exim Bank loan was absolutely correct. I don't know why you keep repeating this. There was two processes, and obviously when the president came, that was the final process. It had to go through a process. I mean, and I give you a lovely example, maybe, and if I give you an example, maybe you wouldn't ask the same question all the time. Every day, if you're abroad through your mail, you will see banks send you have been pre-approved, and they send you a pre-approved credit card. You will be very, very foolish if you take that credit card and think you can start spending on it without going to the bank and activating that credit card. I'm sure you're aware of that. I think courts writes you all the time saying you've been pre-approved for $1 million. You can't go and spend that $1 million until you go through the formal process and have it agreed. So I do hope you understand, finally, once again, what was said by me. That the initial process had to go through, there was the initial process which they passed, and it had to be continued. So like why I do hope it's simplistic as that you can understand what it is. Or next time courts writes you and says, oh, you've been pre-approved $1 million, go to the bank and cash it. And if you can't cash it, I will withdraw my statement.
Sir, no one goes with an approval from courts to the bank. But nevertheless, go ahead, Mr. Hughes.
Let me just start off by saying, I know you're talking about Mrs. Hughes' company, Video Mega. Video Mega had been contracted by the government of Guyana under the People's Progressive Party since 2000 and before. They provided professional services, documentaries, and other professional services long before the coalition was elected. They were invited to tender by the People's Progressive Party on several occasions, and on many occasions they won contracts. So when Mrs. Hughes became Minister of Public Telecommunications, there was nothing unusual about the fact that the government continued to hire the services of that company because they had been doing that for years. There's several projects that I can certainly provide to you. There was no allegation that Mrs. Hughes was running both the ministry and her company at the same time. The allegation, which is the subject of litigation, so I won't go into it, was that she had signed a check. In this case, we have a minister personally paying, and that check, sorry, let me just clarify, there's a check from the company. In this case, you have a minister, according to the former employee of Western Logistics, personally transferring money from his private account to the employee of Western Logistics to pay his salary in 3 separate occasions. And the employee said that he frequently saw the minister at the company's headquarters actively participating in the management of the company. So I think I've laid the facts. You can draw the parallels if you wish. I don't believe they exist.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hughes, just a follow-up. So you're saying that the government of Guyana, under the People's Progressive Party Civic, would have hired the telecommunications ministry under the People's Progressive Party Civic would have hired Video Mega to do productions? Is that what you're saying?
No, the government which of Guyana, which was headed by the People's Progressive Party, not the People's Progressive Party as a political entity. The government of Guyana hired Video Mega, and that's for decades. They've had several projects that they've provided professional services, from documentaries going through.
Okay, sir.
Adam is not
Any
here.
other questions? Andrew? Okay, I don't think there are any other
Hey, Kathy.
questions. Yes,
Kathy.
yes, Vince.
Vince. Since we don't have it, let me add here because this here is a very, very serious matter about the non-invitation. And as I recall, this was one of the complaints that went before the United Nations Human Rights Commission. And I think they came down with they in their write up, they reported on this that this here it was one of the matters that need to be corrected in terms of the government not being involved, not the government, sorry, the opposition, not being given the opportunity to participate in these type of decision making. So this is not something that should be taken lightly, but it's as everything else, the government just seems to be ignoring these matters of significance to the nation as with respect to the representation, not only by the opposition leadership, but by half of the country.
I had my hand up to ask.
Pose his question. Adam?
To ask a question. My question has to do with the gas to shore gas to LNG project. Now, I think it was Mr. Patterson who said that 2 weeks prior, the government had gone to the National Assembly to say that the project would be completed this year. And now the government is saying that it's further delayed. Sir, could you explain the process that would have a government take 2 weeks to recognize that it did not have the information at its disposal when it went to Parliament? You're muted, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yes, Adam, it is my opinion, Dave Patterson's opinion. The government knew very well when they came to the budget speech that when they presented the budget that the gas to shore project would not be completed. They knew very well that they had lost the arbitration award because we asked them specifically. But obviously, they, as I said, try to fluff and bluff the country. However, when you come to these conferences, what happens is that the information would leak out, so they had to come in. I mean, obviously, the opposition doesn't have communication with Lindsay CH4, but Lindsay CH4 would be at a conference, and they would tell everybody at the conference if I asked the truth. So they just try to deceive us in the parliament, and I could use that would be not in parliament. The speaker wouldn't allow me to use that word, but they try to deceive the people of Guyana to present a very rosy picture of what's happening in the country when in reality we know that is not the case. And Adam, we can look around the country and you can see it out that nothing that they have promised is in place. You know what I mean? And whatever they've done is purely slapdash. I mean, Heroes Highway, I was on it yesterday afternoon, and their holes developing in Heroes Highway. So you will see soon they will get up and announce that they have to do repairs. In the section with Grove, they spent an extremely large amount of money fixing up sidewalks and Grove. That's stretching on East Bank, old East Bank Road. And they're breaking up those concrete drains right now and redoing them. So, you mean, it's just typical of the PPP. They just throw taxpayers' money away and then obviously, and then try to hide it. But you can't hide in plain sight. So they knew exactly what was going on with the gas to shore project during the budget debate, but they chose not to mention it to the parliamentarian in the country.
And quickly,
Thank you,
sir,
Mr. Patterson.
uh,
Go
Ms.
ahead, Adam.
Hughes, if you would allow me, this is a question for Leader Nigel Hughes. Sir, you applauded Dr. Terence Campbell for his move to the court. I learned that Dr. Terence Campbell was some $2 million out of pocket in filing this court action. I would want to believe that Dr. Terence Campbell, having been appointed by the opposition, should be supported by the opposition in funding this thing. Can you say if the opposition is prepared to help him fund this legal challenge, sir?
Adam, this is the first time I'm hearing that the legal costs are $2 million. I'm assuming that's where the costs are. I'm completely unaware. I know Terence personally, and so it'd be difficult for me to answer that unless I've engaged and he says that he needs help. This is the first time I'm hearing about the costs.
Okay, I can understand. And one last thing, the Amrara Harbor Bridge, obviously not going to be completed as scheduled or has been delayed over and over and over. Could someone say, what is the state of the new Demrara Harbor Bridge at this time? How far along has it gone?
Look, Adam, remember about 6 months ago, Edgel and his entire team had a big press conference announcing that the project is 70% completed and it will be finished in March, which is this year. And then obviously the company themselves came around and said, and no one challenged it, you know what I mean, in the sense that none of the company officials, they're sitting around challenged it. The company themselves got up and very honestly, I think the president started it, and the company very honestly said, oh, they don't anticipate they'll be finishing for 2026. We know, first and foremost, the contract for the roads. So you can't have a bridge without connecting roads. And the contract for the roads, anybody could pass and see it out that's now starting. Anyone can look at the bridge to see it out that they're now proceeding to try and get the decking. They haven't even done the cantilever suspended section, the suspended slab as yet. In reality, I mean that the project low 40s, low to high 40s percentage complete. The Minister of Works has set out the drop dead date is August the 31st, which, Adam, as you know, is just 4 or 5 months away. But obviously, being a bishop, I mean, obviously, we want to see after he dropped dead on the 31st of August, if he'll be able to resurrect himself, because guaranteed that nothing will be finished. Once again, I mean, it is just poor planning and deceitful dissemination of information by the PPP. It is, and they will go to the public and say it out that when the bridge is finished, they will be toll free, knowing full well that the bridge wouldn't be finished for 2026. In addition to Adam, and another telltale sign that the bridge won't be finished is that in budget 2025, they allocated $450 million to the old bridge, right, to do repairs to the old bridge. Obviously, if you're so confident that the new bridge will be finished by August, which is August, that's 6 months away, why would you be spending that amount of money allocating $2.5 million US for 6 months life on the old bridge? So, I mean, the more they try to deceive, the more they reveal their incompetence is revealed.
Hey, Adam.
Thank you very
Adam,
much, David Patterson, and thank you to the media. Before we close off, I do want to extend a very happy Republic celebration to our to all of Guyana, to our members of the media. I know it's going to be a busy weekend, lots of activities as we celebrate our republic, and also Mashramani. Please, citizens, do it in a safe manner. To the drivers on the road especially, we want to say, drive with care, look out for the person that's not looking out for you. And with that, we want to thank you all for joining us today at our press conference, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.